Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to dive into a way of seeing the world that's, well, it's pretty powerful. It's the kind of thing that can totally change how you solve problems, how you look at the news, and maybe even how you see your own life. We're going to learn how to stop thinking in those familiar straight lines and start thinking in circles.
And it all starts with this idea from, believe it or not, over 2,000 years ago. This is the absolute heart of what we're exploring today. Now, it sounds simple, right? But it actually pushes back against the way most of us were taught to think. We're trained to break things down, take them apart, analyze the pieces. But what if the real magic, the actual story, isn't in the parts themselves, but in how they all connect and dance together? And that's a fantastic question because honestly, this piece-by-piece approach, this linear thinking, has been unbelievably successful for us. But here's the catch. It also leaves us kind of blind to the bigger picture. And that often leads us to completely misdiagnose problems and miss the solutions that are hiding in plain sight. Okay, so first up, let's really dig into our default mental model. This is the framework most of us are using every single day, and we don't even realize it. It's time to put that old way of thinking under the microscope. So, on the left, you've got our usual approach, reductionism. It's the very foundation of modern science, right? To understand a car, you take apart the engine. To understand a company, you look at the sales department, then the marketing department, and so on. And look, this has built our modern world, but it has a massive gaping blind spot. It just completely ignores the relationships, the dynamic interactions between all those parts. Systems thinking, on the other hand, totally flips the script. It says, nope, the connections, that's where the story is.
And this is exactly where that straight line thinking really trips us up. We're always looking for a single culprit, a single domino to blame. We point the finger at a political leader for a recession, but the boom and bust cycle is actually woven into the very fabric of the market structure. We blame our competitors when our company is failing, but we forget that our own policies helped create that mess. We see the flu as this outside invader, not realizing that our own body's state creates the perfect environment for it to take hold. We're looking for a single domino when we should be looking at the entire web.
This same exact thinking flaw applies to our own lives too. We just love simple answers. There was a famous TED Talk that said grit is the single best predictor of success. Sounds great, right? But when you actually dig into the research, grit explains just 4% of the difference in success between people. 4%. That means 96% of it is everything else. The context, the relationships, the luck, the system you're in. See? Simple, linear answers, they just miss most of the picture.
So, if taking things apart doesn't always give us the answer, what's the alternative? Well, funny enough, it all kicks off with a wild discovery made by a computer scientist at 3 o'clock in the morning.
The year is 1971. A computer scientist named Chris Langton is up late debugging some code. Just to kill some time, he runs this really simple program called the Game of Life. And as he's watching the pixels dance around on the screen, he suddenly feels this presence in the room with him. He spins around in his chair. Nothing. Nobody's there. He turns back to the screen, and the hair on the back of his neck just stands up. The presence he felt was coming from the program. It actually seemed alive.
And this phenomenon is called emergence. And get this, the Game of Life has no leader, no central planner, no master blueprint. It's just a few dead simple rules for each little pixel based only on its immediate neighbors. And from that simplicity, this breathtaking, unpredictable complexity is born. It's the exact same thing with a flock of starlings. There's no head bird up there choreographing that incredible dance in the sky. It's just each individual bird following a few simple rules, like stay close to your neighbor, but not too close. The interactions between the parts create a whole that is so much more than their sum.
And this brings us to a really crucial takeaway. To understand why a complex system, whether it's a flock of birds, an economy, or even a project team at work, behaves the way it does, you have to shift your focus. You have to stop staring at the individual components and start looking at the patterns of their interactions. That's what's really driving the behavior.
Okay, so to really get our heads around this new worldview, we need to learn the lingo. And the good news is it's actually pretty simple. It all starts with just two basic concepts.
All right, first up, we have what's called a stock. And you can just think of stocks as the nouns of a system. They're the things you can actually see or count or measure at any one moment. It's the amount of water in a bathtub, the amount of money in your bank account, the population of a city. It's the memory of the system, the state of things right now. Okay, so if stocks are the nouns, then our second building block, flows, well, those are the verbs. Flows are the actions that cause the stocks to change over time. The water coming from the faucet is an inflow that makes the stock of water in the tub go up. The drain is an outflow that makes it go down. Births and deaths are flows that change the stock of a population. See? Simple.
Now, here's where the real magic happens. It's in how these stocks and flows are all wired together. They're controlled by something called feedback loops, and these are like the internal circuits that make a system run all by itself. A reinforcing loop is a runaway train. It's an engine of growth or collapse. Think about interest on your savings. The more money you have, the more interest you earn, which gives you even more money, and on it goes. Then you have balancing loops. These are goal-seeking. They try to keep things stable. The thermostat in your house is a classic example. It's constantly trying to keep the room temperature at its goal. Okay, now that we have these building blocks, stocks, flows, and these feedback loops, we can finally get to the deepest, most profound, and most powerful insight in all of systems thinking. Just let that sink in for a second. Structure generates behavior. This is the central idea that changes everything. What this means is that the behavior of a system, whether it grows or collapses or stays stable or oscillates, isn't really caused by outside events or some bad apple person, nearly as much as it is by the system's own internal structure. The way those feedback loops are wired together basically determines the outcome. A really powerful way to visualize this is with something called the iceberg model. Most of us, most of the time, we live at the very tip of the iceberg. We're just reacting to events, the daily news headline, the stock market dipping, catching a cold. But if you look just below the surface of the water, you can start to spot patterns over time. The real power, though, comes when you dive deeper to understand this system structure, the feedback loops, and the wiring that's causing those patterns in the first place. And at the very bottom, the foundation of the whole thing, that's our mental models, the deep, often unconscious beliefs that hold the entire system right where it is. And this brings us to the most practical, actionable takeaway of all. If you want different results, if you want to create real, lasting change, you have to stop playing whack-a-mole with the events on the surface. You can't just fix symptoms or blame individuals. You have to go deeper. You have to understand and then actually redesign the underlying structure of the system itself. Okay, so how do we actually use this new perspective? This isn't just a cool theory. It actually gives us a really practical roadmap for making a difference in the world around us. Instead of just pushing harder and harder on the most obvious parts of a problem, which are often the least effective, a systems thinker looks for what are called leverage points. These are the elegant, strategic places inside a system structure where one small, well-placed nudge can create huge, cascading, lasting change. It's really all about working smarter, not just harder. So what's the biggest leverage point of them all? The holy grail, if you will? Well, it's not tweaking a flow or adding a new rule. The most powerful thing you can do is learn to transcend paradigms. It's the ability to see, to question, and maybe even to change the deepest held beliefs and mental models, the very bottom of that iceberg that everyone else just takes for granted.
Which brings us to our final thought to leave you with. Think about the systems in your own life. Your health, your career, your relationships, your community. Which ones are you only seeing the surface events of? And what new possibilities might just open up for you if you could hold your own beliefs a little more lightly and truly embrace the profound openness of not knowing? It's a powerful question to carry with you. Thanks for joining me.